about hybrid Sunday school classes, and I'll talk about that. All 3 sessions are unique, but crossover content. You can imagine there's so much crossover between all 3 of the contents that we're talking about. So there's a sense of continuity to some degree. I haven't made it that perfect, so it's not you're like, wow, you got it all perfect. No, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. But it is, you'll know some crossover content, and that's intentional. Also, if you have questions in-house or in person, I just raise your hand. We're a small group, 15 people, whatever it is. I don't mind. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to say I don't know the answer. If I do know the answer and it's relevant, I'll answer the question. If it's not relevant, I'm just going to say, can we wait till break? And that will go from there. And don't hesitate. I don't mind. It's just, it doesn't bother me at all. Those who are online, I don't know, camera on my, but those who are online, same thing, except for you, we're not going to have you raise your hand. We're going to have you just put in the chat box your question. And my chat moderator, which happens to be my wife right now, is going to be keeping an eye on those. And she's going to say, Tim, we have a question from Dana or Gary or somebody else out there online. All right? So pretty straightforward. Any questions before we begin? All right. One of the things that when Bob asked me to come and talk to you guys and be a part of this organization with this day today, I didn't answer him like immediately. And there was a reason I didn't, because I don't believe that I should just be a knee-jerk response to something like that. I love to talk. Those who know me, I cannot talk just about everybody. But one of the things I have realized is sometimes you can talk all day long and nobody's hearing you. And I didn't want that to be today. So I wanted it to be something that God drove us to hear today and led to me. One morning I woke up shortly after I talked to him a couple of days later, and God revealed to me a verse that we have all heard hundreds of times, Acts 1:8. We all know the verse, and I'll read it. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Now you're going, what's the connection? Well, if you break the verse down, there's 3 sections, all right? And so our first topic today is hybrid Sunday school classes, and I'll talk about that. That's our Jerusalem. That's our direct response group that we have, we can communicate with as well. Second session this morning will be church use of social media to impact the community. That's our Judea and Samaria. That's our group outside of our walls of our church and outside of our particular people. And this afternoon session, probably my favorite session overall, because I love to talk about live streaming, but is going to be effective live streaming. And so that's the rest of the world. We have this incredible opportunity. Man, don't waste it. So we're gonna talk about all those as well. So I don't know if did they get a copy of the synopsis? Or did it? Okay, so some of you may have saw some of the basic things we're going to talk about. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is the hybrid Sunday school classes. So I want to define what that is in my opinion, and you can interact with me all you need, but I think of hybrid Sunday school classes as small groups, discipleship groups, Bible study groups, whatever you want to call it. A small group. Even this technically would kind of fit in that category of a small group of people. All right, so when you do the hybrid, in the normal circumstances, if this was a normal day pre-COVID, or even before that, but we'd have our Sunday school class, and we'd all be cozy and drinking our coffee and our donuts and whatever else you do on any given Sunday, Wednesday, whatever day you meet, right? That's normal. But today, something changed in our life. Just like 9/11 changed for a lot of people, it changed a whole lot of things there. COVID has changed everything. It changed our way we think. It's changed the way we do our daily life. Got to put a mask on before you go to Walmart. Now, they're not so particular anymore, but you should still probably do it. But that's up to you guys, because I'm not going to go down that road. But nevertheless, one of the things I have found is that things happen in our lives. We've all experienced difficult times, some of them more tragic than others. A good friend of mine just died a couple of days ago from a fishing accident. He just fell off the boat and died. I just found out yesterday. I couldn't believe it, how quickly life can change. So I look at this as COVID as a blessing. Maybe not to you personally, because maybe you've experienced it in a negative way, but from a church's perspective, it's got to be used to effectively communicate to the rest of the world. The world is desperately looking for people to tell them the truth. I heard on the news, on my little Alexa device that popped up today, this morning, it says 242% increase on fake news. Guess what? There's a reason for that. The reason we have so much more fake news, quote-unquote fake news, is because we have a lot more media outlets out there that we are able to communicate with. So the statistics are whatever you want them to be. Understand that and to recognize that. One of the things I have found is that a lot of churches, when COVID first hit, the first thing, and we'll get to this afternoon, was we got a live stream. We've got to get our Nobody's allowed in the building. We got to get our message out, deal with that first one. And that was our first and foremost, and we were busy for 2-3 months straight. I didn't sleep in April at all, like barely, did I? It was ridiculous. We were working so much. And so, but God bless, because I'm okay with that. That's what I do for a living. And I was okay with COVID because it didn't hurt us personally. But the reality is hurting a lot of people. And people are really struggling with what's going on. They're isolated. They're limited. There are groups of people, for whatever reason, I don't know why they're not here today. That's their choice. Some of them are working in their offices, or they may just not feel comfortable being in a group like this yet. That's actually normal. So what you have today is these new opportunities for our small groups, small Sunday school class environments, to actually allow people to be part of your church environment without actually being in the building. I have always said, and I've worked with thousands of churches, I've always said, you've got to think past your four walls. Most churches are so much about, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, so I'll probably offend all of you, but I'm not trying to offend anybody. Most people have been so focused on our buildings and our structures and the things that we have focused on, the money we pour in to our kitchens, which is important, by the way. I've got to have food, you know. Yeah, whatever denomination you have, you like food, that's for sure. But those are important. But the most important thing is getting people's lives in check with Jesus. That's what it's all about. That's what hybrid Sunday school classes is really about. It's not just about tech. And we're going to talk about all that as well. So first and foremost, the first thing I found was churches are notorious, and you probably could raise your hand going, yeah, that's us, are doing the knee-jerk response. You know, oh my gosh, we have COVID, we got to do something. I have been preaching live stream for years, but nobody listens. A few did, but most people are like, yeah, that's just an add-on thing. A few people will watch it. Yeah, but if you were set up ahead of time, I have churches that were already set up with online streaming. They were live streaming, they were online giving, and all their church management was all done online through a cloud like ACS Realm or something like that. They didn't miss a beat. In fact, financially, they were doing better than they were, like, maybe we shouldn't open our doors anymore. I'm kidding. But anyways, they were actually like going, this is crazy. We're doing better financially than we've ever done before because of weird things, because they were in place. Everything was set up already. So guess what? You may not be in that position. You may be now, but you weren't maybe in COVID times 6 months ago. You probably have worked on at least something right now, live streaming to some degree. But one of the things that you have is to recognize that planning is essential. I had a church come up to me. Well, actually, I went to them because they called me up and told me, please come up and do some consulting for us. They said, we are going to go, this was a week and a half before October 4th, whatever that is. All right, just the end of September, they said, on October 4th, and a lot of you opened up your doors on October 4th as well, said, we are going to go open our Sunday school classes up, and we got to do this, put a Zoom camera in there. We got to get it all working. I said, okay, that's fine. And so we had to ask a lot of questions, like, how many classes are you talking about? That's a real technical question we have to ask. What size are your rooms? I had never been in that part of the building. We got to do a tour of your visit, your location. It changes everything because it depends on the dynamic of the room, the size of the classes, and the number of classes. Mathematically, it makes a difference because you only have so much internet speed. Now, some of you may have some really fast internet speeds. This location, not so much. Unfortunately, we don't have a super fast internet here, so they're limited on how many connections they can have at the same time. That particular church said to me, Tim, we are going to have in the adult classes 8 classes, and each class is going to have a laptop and an iPhone, so we can have a moderator and a teacher view. All right? Okay, that's 16. 8 times 2 is 16. I went to the youth, the adults. I went to the youth and asked them, the youth minister, how many classes are you having? I'm going to have 5 classes times 2. That's 10. Children, we're not doing anything. So, okay, so that's 28 connections. 28 connections, and they're high speed, and they're using a live stream at a high quality level, probably higher than they need. Mathematically, they couldn't do it because they didn't have enough internet bandwidth. That's a basic thing that's involved with the planning process that is so essential to do that. Before COVID hit, just curiosity, did any of you have any hybrid Sunday school classes around? Probably no, right? Like almost nobody did. Like that was kind of a weird, stupid concept, kind of thing. How many of you offering right now are offering hybrid Sunday school classes? A couple, well, about half, all right? And then I guess the rest are not offering it. So that would be my third question. You can answer that. And so there may be a reason. Either you don't know how to do it, Or it's not, well, it's not my job. I'm just the church administrator. I don't have to do that kind of stuff. That's what his job. He's the education minister. That's his job. Or he's supposed to coordinate all the media guys. Whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference. If you're a church administrator or in that role or anything like this that you're in here today, you can at least have some influence on saying we got to move forward in what he's talking about. Because if we don't, we're going to miss out. Now, I ask churches all the time, how many people showed up on your Zoom classes? The numbers are low. All right, be real. They're not like sometimes 2. But 2 is better than 0, in my opinion. I had a pastor, it was at this church, a previous pastor of this church, not the same one here now, and we were talking about online giving, and he goes, I don't want to, everybody's like, we don't want to pay the fees for that, credit card processing, a couple of percentage points. And I said, dude, are you serious? It's like we talked about it for a while. He goes, now that I think about it, I'd rather have $97 than 0. It makes sense. So, and the point I'm making of that is that there is a value in having, whether it be one person or 20 people online, because at least they're online. At least they're communicating with you. Otherwise, you lost them altogether. It's a good chance they may never come back to your churches. Now, guess what? COVID did something interesting. Just like a lot of these things happen, it filters out the riffraff. It's a horrible thing to say. It filters out the fringe people. That's probably the better word I'm looking for. The people that were kind of just coming to church a little bit. They were just showing up in attendance. They weren't really dedicated to your church. If you actually did a poll, and I don't know for a fact, so don't quote me on this, but I bet you if you did a poll right now and asked all the people that show up on Sunday morning and those who show up online, how many of them were actively involved? Now, it varies on your demographics a little bit, of course. You're going to find that that's what happened. A lot of people that were just kind of showing up on Sunday morning are not there anymore because they had a reason. I can watch it online, and I'm okay with that. I like watching my service online. We have a pretty good production in our church. We have a big church. I go Northside Baptist. It's a big church. They got a lot of people involved in their media team. They do a pretty good job. Every once in a while they screw up, but guess what? We all do that. So then guess what? If they screw up, guess what I did? I flip channels. Now, we're old enough to say, you know what that means? We don't really flip a channel. We just go to a different YouTube channel. I guess it's a channel. We just change channels. If they're having audio problems today, let's go to another one. Switch over. The same thing is true in the Sunday school environment. I'm hoping the sound is working. We've done a lot of tests, and we'll find out if people can hear us. I'm assuming they are because they're still there. But one of the things that we'll find out is that audio is key. Your first and most important thing is internet speed. That's critical. When you talk about hybrid classes or anything like this in your environment, you've got to have fast internet, as fast as you can afford. And even more if you can afford it more. If you can just find some magic money showing up somewhere else, the extra $100 will pay for itself, 100 guaranteed. Because if they're part of your classes, and if they come to your church in person, or if they come to your church in online environment, what does that tell you? They want to be a part of your church. Guess what it also tells you? That they're also going to give more money. Guess what? That $100 that you're looking for just showed up out of nowhere. So the point I'm trying to make is all relative. You just have to figure out how that works in that process. When the church tells me I can't afford the extra X amount of dollars to upgrade the internet, I think that's not true. I had a church that told me we just spent, I think $100,000. No, I'm sorry, $30-something thousand, excuse me, $37,000 on a brand new church, a kitchen remodel, right when COVID hit. This was happening. And he was like, we got to go live stream. We go, we can't afford it. Oh, yes, you can. You can afford it. You can find a way to do it. You have to be able to choose whether they think it's important or not. And I believe it's very important. Now, interesting enough, there are a lot of unintended consequences to a live stream environment like this. We purposely have muted all of them. Nothing personal. We've chosen to mute them because of the audio sounds and stuff like that. But they're going to ask questions, and that's fine. But one of the things I have found is that there are some people who don't like to be on a screen. Now, I got a puny little 32-inch screen over there. A lot of you guys that have hybrid classes, let's go 50, 55, 60-inch screens. I went to a church, a big church, not too far from here, went into the foyer. It's a big foyer. Into the education foyer. And I'm going, oh my gosh, please tell me this is not what I think it is. And there were stacks of 60-inch televisions everywhere. Everywhere. I'm like, oh my God. And they have a big church, so they can afford it. It's not a money issue. And I was like, what are you going to do with all those TVs? I already knew the answer, but I just like, we're going to have everybody do, right now media, and we're going to have, virtual classes. I'm going, no, you're not. Not today, not right now. You don't have enough internet bandwidth to handle half of that load, let alone all that. Oh, we didn't think about that. They didn't plan it out. They didn't even foresight think about the possibilities of the physical impact it has to your network. And so the unintended consequences, some people don't like to be on a big screen. Guess what? They can just turn the camera off. But my mom's 81. She would never know. If she went on that, she'd be terrified. She doesn't like her face to be on the screen. We do family Zooms. I don't want my face to be on the screen. Mom, it's okay. Just push that button. Don't bite. You have to teach them it's okay. But some people, and the interesting thing about it was, and I'm 54 years old. I would have never thought this. And I was a youth minister many years ago, so things have really changed. Who are online like all the time? Youth, right? Like constantly on their phones, much like some of us here. But anyways, and you would think they would have no problem putting their faces on the screen, right? That would be the logical thing to assume. That's not true. They do not want it unless their makeup's perfect. They're so vain, they're teenagers. They're so vain in the sense of their way they think that unless they got it perfect, the girls especially, they don't want their faces on the screen. They're not comfortable with it. Now, they'll do it with each other, friends. But if you ask them to put it in, the group that's struggling the hardest is the teenage classes, the youth ministers, getting the people to do Zoom. Because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be people to see me in my pajamas or something, So it is an interesting dynamic. Also, we got a couple of screens all over. I haven't been really watching that much, but I left this one on purpose. He's showing what's going on up here on the Zoom, on the online streaming skimming. One of the things I also was identifying is if you have screens like in front of your room, especially the big ones, where are your eyes going to be? Where's your focus going to be? It's going to be watching the screen. Have you ever gone to Chili's or any other restaurant, unfortunately? What do we all do? We go right to the screen. Whether we care about the content or not, like NBA. Anyways, we just sit there and watch what's going on. Sorry. There's a little slant. Anyways, we sit there and we can't help it. It's like our nature to watch the movement on the screen. It happens to happen. So I get frustrated when I do I do a lot of Zoom calls and other variations of them with my small groups because I like to, and I like to talk and listen and everything else. But I hate it. And I'm sorry, this is a personal pet peeve when their dog comes into the room. And and they don't mute themselves. Please mute your phones. Mute your dogs. Mute your computers, whatever it takes. Or even almost worse, when they're petting their dog. You know what I'm talking about. You've all seen it at least once. They're petting their dog because they love their dog. I don't care what you're saying, what the teacher's saying. If somebody's petting their dog in front of you, you're watching that. Your mind is shifted all of a sudden. The point I'm trying to make in all this is that when you are thinking about putting your hybrid Sunday school classes in place, you got to understand there are a lot of consequences that happen in the midst of those circumstances. So factor in how you're going to control that environment. Can you turn their camera off? Mute their camera, that kind of stuff. Things as well. So we watch the televisions without even thinking. That's our nature because there's scientific proof on that one. I didn't quote it, but it is also true. So let me ask you a quick question. Is it important that online members see the teacher, the Zoom people, or whatever you want to call them? That's kind of a duh. Of course, Tim. What a stupid question to ask. It probably would be the most logical thing, right? And I would agree. They need to be able to see who's talking if there's a teacher involved in a small group environment. And again, we're talking primarily small group environment or a group like this. They need to kind of know who's talking. However, do they need to see the people in the room? Kind of I don't know, maybe so, maybe not. It's interesting. Have you ever been to a Sunday school class where you sat down and you focus right on the teacher? I'm going to use you because you're from Weatherford, and I'm from Weatherford, so we can do that. We have a connection. Anyways, sorry. And by the way, the very first website we did was your church, long time ago. The first website, many years ago. But I still have the check you guys gave us because it was our first check from there. But anyways, I had you're the teacher, and I'm focused on you. And have you ever focused on just the teacher and nobody else? Of course not. You're in a small group. You're sitting in a circle. Or maybe you're in a classroom like this, but you're still looking at the back of people's heads or the front of their heads or whatever they're doing, because that's just part of your nature. So the question is do they care? Do the people that are online care that see you? If they want to interact, they do. to have to some degree. So you have to factor that into the element of the structure. When we do a consultation for churches for something like this or anything remotely close to this, is that we do go through your class sizes, class demographics. I have a church that I work with. We did a lot of hybrid setups, and they had a very dedicated, mostly later 70s and 80s women class. They call it Ruth's class or something like that. They're almost always Ruth. But anyways, whatever class name it is, it's an older group of women. And half of them, they're always at church. They never miss church. But COVID hit. And then we want to be back in class. So they wanted to do this this hybrid thing. And they said, okay, how do we do this? And so what they did was, they said, well, half the people were okay with coming with their mask, cute little mask and stuff. The other, I can't do that. I got to do it from home. He was right. The older people are the ones who are doing it online. Don't just assume just because they're old they can't do it. That's not true. All right, don't ever assume anything like that. That's definitely wrong. And so, however, they had a lot of technical glitches. And of course, I wasn't part of that initial part of setup. And I started to say, we need to help you to make sure this process works smoothly. They had a laptop for the teacher, an iPhone on a stand, kind of like this, sitting there facing the people. All right. But where their location was in that room, there was hardly any Wi-Fi. And they were on a Wi-Fi connection trying to tap into the children's hall down there where they were close to, because they were on the lower level and they didn't want to have to walk up the stairs or anything, or elevator. So what we ended up doing was recognizing that's a real problem, and how do we resolve that? From a technical perspective, we ran a network drop in there, made sure we had a nice, strong connection. We ended up putting another Wi-Fi unit closer just to make them extra happy. But nevertheless, they're also in a place where their cell service does not work. They're in a valley. The church is in a valley, and they're like AT&T, Sprint. Nobody works in that valley. So they can't use their phones, cell service, because it doesn't work. So we had to come up with a working solution. So if you are deploying the idea of doing online classes of any form, you got to factor in a technical side of it. If you don't, you're going to fail, or you're going to have issues. And people are going to have, if you have issues, people are not coming back. If you can't get it right, they're probably not going to pay attention to you. And if you can't get it right in regards to your technical aspect, they're going to go, it's just too much of a pain. They can't ever get it right. They're always moving the camera around. It's driving me crazy, whatever that circumstance may be. So you have to factor that in as well. Basic things here. Platforms. What a platform is everybody's heard of Zoom, right? You guys have all Zoomed. I've been using Zoom for 5-6 years. No big deal to me. I didn't think about it. We do it all the time. And then it's the greatest thing since sliced cheese. It's been around forever. What's anything new? It just so happens they tapped into it just perfect timing on COVID. Google Meet, I'm a huge fan. We use it heavily in our business. I'm on Google Meet pretty much every single day with my staff. Almost always in some form or another. If you are a church that uses the Google platform instead of the Microsoft platform for your technology background, you already got it built in. You don't have to do anything extra special. If you're a nonprofit church, you better not be paying for it. If you are, then you're any of those products. Otherwise, you're wasting a bunch of money, and we can help you with that. You can get it all for basically free. And another thing is that another option that's kind of new for most people, if you're on the Microsoft Office 365 platform, there is the Microsoft Teams. That is an option as well. It's kind of new in the sense of the way they redefined the whole program quite a bit recently. And then, of course, some of you may know, recently in April, May, they released Facebook Messenger Rooms, which allows up to 50 people. I'm not a huge fan of Facebook Messenger Rooms for this purpose, because what does it do? Anybody know? Want to take a guess why I don't be a fan of it? Because you've got to have a Facebook account. You have to have a Facebook account to use it. So guess what? A lot of people don't want to have a Facebook account. In fact, interesting enough, the people that don't have Facebook accounts anymore or just don't use them are the teenagers, because it's too slow technology. We're going, this is awesome, whatever. We can communicate all kinds of ways, and it is a great product, ish. But anyways, there are a lot of options. We got Snapchat, Instagram, everything else that they play with today. It's overwhelming. I can't even keep up myself, and I do it all day long, and I still can't keep up. So there are some options. But if you're using certainly Google Meet or Zoom, anybody can join with the browser. It's pretty easy. It's very simple. And for me personally, I'm a big Google person. I believe in the power of Google. I believe the power of the Lord. But anyways, that's another different conversation. But as far as technology is concerned, Google has an incredibly awesome product line. Do any of you use the G Suite or whatever they call it now, workspace platform? I knew Travis did. And so, and I've been, for years, it was a Microsoft Outlook person. I was all into Outlook. Man, I won't touch Outlook now unless I have to, because it's like useless to me. It doesn't think like my brain does. The reason I say, and I know I've just offended half the people in the room, I know that, but I don't care. I'm just trying to say is that if you're stuck on using an environment, and you're not, if you're doing it correctly, hopefully they did it right, is you don't have to be in front of your computer to use your email. You should be able to do it any platform, on any device, anywhere you're at. You can pull up Microsoft Office 365 or Google, whatever it is, and open up your product. And another thing that this is kind of new, and I really don't have a lot to say about it, but we were kind of playing with the idea with a couple people. But some of you have heard of Google Classroom? Your kids or your grandkids or something like that, whatever, have used it in their schools. Google Classroom is a platform on Google that allows you to set up a class environment. Quite frankly, we have special classes. Google Classroom kind of makes sense. We can put material online. We can do a Google Meet integration right in there, built in. And we have chat moderation, chat options. There's a lot of choices. And if you're on a G Suite, or now called Google Workspace, they just changed the name, it's free. So it doesn't cost you anything at all. And if you're not, you can still get it free, and I can tell you about that later on. So you have Zoom and Google and maybe Classroom, which is kind of a new thing, and there are some limitations. Each of the programs have the pros and cons. Just this morning I heard that Zoom has come out with a whole bunch of new features that most of us care less about. But they are coming out with them, and they're always going to come out with them until they can't afford to do it anymore, because there's new cool stuff. Zoom does have breakout rooms. Have anybody ever used the breakout room? Not a lot of people have. They say we're in a big Zoom class, and we want to break out one of the classes to a subclass, like our beginning class, and then break it out. That would be our opportunity to break out that class out of it to its own little classroom. That's what that's for. Google Meet has not officially deployed that yet, but they will. And it's getting ready to be released here pretty soon to the general public. It's available in certain suites, like the enterprise level programs, but not to the rest of the suites yet, and not to the nonprofits yet either. So one of the things, let me see if I can do this right. I'm going to pull up. Here, this is Google Meet, just like Zoom, okay? I've already added my classes to the, good to see you again, to the classes to the my calendar ahead of time, and as soon as I did that, they showed up, all right? The nice thing about the way this structure, and by the way, you can do a lot of this on Microsoft and other things as well, so please understand that I'm just using this as an example. But one of the things I like about going to a controlled environment, not that I'm totally a control freak, but I'm a management freak. I believe that it's imperative as a church that you control what's going on in your churches in regards to the content that's being pushed out there. If you don't do it, you will lose it. I'm telling you, it will happen, and you can quote me on that one. So what's going to happen is what I mean by that is if you allow people, and some of you don't have to raise your hand, but some of you already have this set up where, well, they can just use their own Zoom accounts, or they can use their own phones, or they can use their own laptops. We don't care. It doesn't cost us any money. It's free. But as soon as you do that, you open yourself up to all kinds of possibilities and issues from a technical perspective, from a business perspective of how you operate your organization. How much content do you allow people to push out there that is it really from us? You've all heard about branding. Everybody knows what branding is. And branding is basically to make sure that it identifies who we are as an organization and making sure that our content is relative. They always use the phrase, control the narrative. You've heard that before, at least on some show or nothing. I think it's imperative that you do that. And so in this environment, if you have a Google Meet or even a Microsoft platform, and you choose to go ahead and allow you go ahead and pre-set up your classes, your virtual class environments, all right, your virtual Zoom classes, kind of like what Bob did today. He pre-set up these scheduled events for today, all right. He did ahead of time. It's the same idea. Make sure that you go ahead and that you are not just allowing them to use their own personal accounts, because then there's going to be technical glitches. If you control the accounts they use, and you deploy them to the departments, then you have control. If somebody has an issue or somebody leaves the church, you just change a password. So teacher, you can call them class number 1, class 2, class 3, whatever you call your classes, Ruth's class, I don't care. Whatever that is, and you have a login specifically for that class, and then that environment stays that same. They put everything on their own calendar, everything like that as well, and it's going to be a controlled environment. I'm telling you from experience is that if you just allow people to do their own thing, they will. It's so crazy how true that is. So I have found that it's easy. If I go into, and this is just an example, so bear with me a little bit. If I go into my Google Calendar and I add, today is the 13th, I'll put in here just a quick, test, add Google Meet. Let's see if it works. I didn't even put a time in there. Oh, yeah, there it is. Instantly, I flipped back to the screen, it was already there. So the point was, it's very easy to add and control the calendar functions and the scheduled events for your online classes. Now, some of your classes are not always meeting at the 9:30 hour or whatever hour you meet. Some are meeting at different times during the week. But you can do the same thing on anything you want to. So that's one way I believe it's important to do that. One thing I have found is, I'm going to make sure I'm keeping track of my time here. I don't want to run it over. One of the things I have found is that COVID has done something really kind of weird. It's caused a lot of isolation for a lot of people. You all know that. You've heard the news lots of times. People are really going through some difficult times, and it's been very difficult. People that are online, there's a reason they're staying online in their Sunday school classes, if they are at all, because they feel there's a sense of they feel like that they're not safe to go out to the buildings, perhaps. Maybe they just like that platform better, whatever that is. But if you don't know why, it's your fault. What I mean, I told you I was going to offend a bunch of people. I want you to understand is that I believe that you should identify and make sure everybody that's online, make sure you communicate with them regularly. If they're online, communicate with them immediately. Like, we recognize you're here. If I walked into this Sunday school class, and you're the teacher, and your name is, again, Lance. I knew it had an L in it. I got the first two letters right. If Lance is my teacher, and I'm in the class, and I sit down in the chair, and nobody pays attention to me, guess what's going to happen next week? I'm not coming back. I mean, it's a chance. I may give you a second chance, Lance, because I think you're a good teacher. But the rest of the people I could care less about. You know, you get what I'm saying. If you come online, it's even more of a disconnect. If you don't communicate with them immediately, you've lost them, a good chance of losing them. So I believe that you need to communicate with your people in normal environment regularly already. You should be doing that the day of church. People are like, well, we don't have time. Seriously? That should be Sunday morning. That should be part of your process of you doing that. We have set some churches up to do that, where they're communicating to the people that are not there on Sunday morning before they get the rest of the day, before they watch the Cowboy game. Because guess what? We care that they're not there. We care that they're not there. I like that. Anyways, but the same thing is true for people that are online. I point over there, but you know what I'm talking about, the Zoom calls. Is if you don't communicate with them, they will just disappear very quickly. And I'm telling you, it happens over and over again. So accountability is important. Real quick, because of time, I'm going to be careful of my time here. I was involved in a science school class, and my wife and I were going, and she knows what I say on this, but is that we, for various reasons, either travel or for other circumstances, did not show up to class for 6 weeks in a row. There was legit reasons. We're sick, gone, blah, 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 all right? But we were already disconnected with the class. I wasn't as much. Maybe she was a little more. That's okay. But there was a disconnect already because we weren't 100% in. We were relatively new to the class. But nobody ever called me. Like, nobody ever connected. I'm a member of the church. Like, nobody ever contacted me. I'm poor Tim, he's so sad. Please understand where I'm coming from. This happens in all our churches. And if you're willing to be honest, it probably happens in your church. It's most people are not good about communicating to those who are not there because they'll show up next week. I didn't show up for 6 weeks. So I just so happened to have, and I got to be careful because one person here may know who I'm talking about, but I decided to, I was helping my mom, who's 81, help her with her finances. She sold her house in California, moved to Texas, and, pile cash. Anyways, how am I going to handle all this money? We're going to do it with her. And without going into a lot of details, I wanted to talk to a financial advisor. That's a logical thing to do. The guy that was recommended to me happened to be the Sunday school director of my class, My social class, well, he's a Christian. I got to trust him, right? So I called him. We talked finances for about 10 minutes. After it was all over, I paused. And he goes, Tim, I haven't seen you in class for a while. Like, dude, you haven't seen me for 6 weeks. He goes, what do you mean, 6 weeks? I haven't been there in 6 weeks. And I said, and nobody, I decided I've got his attention. I'm just going to ram it down his throat. Nobody paid attention to us. Nobody contacted us. Now, I can handle it. I'm strong enough in my faith so to understand that. But a lot of people are not. They've isolated enough as it is with COVID. That's even more of that's an in-person situation. I decided to make sure he knew that was wrong. And he paused, and he apologized. Okay, move thumbs up. Maybe we can get better from there. COVID hits. It was going on at that point, very beginning of it. They decided to do hybrid classes. And one of my friends is in the class. He goes, Tim, here's a link to the Zoom class. Come and be a part of the class again. Okay, I jumped in, right on time. Just like, I kind of kept my I kept my thing muted, but I was there. I did unmute, said, hi, everybody. Nobody paid attention to me. I don't know about you guys, but I was really insulted by it. Now, I can handle it personally, but some people cannot. And if you have a situation like that, you're not going to get them back. You're going to lose them forever. And so at the end of the class, I decided to write him an email saying, dude, you screwed up again, because he didn't communicate after. And he never did. And I don't know if I just offended him so bad. I don't know what it was. But the reality is that's what happens oftentimes in our environments. And so hybrid classes are challenging. We have technical issues. We have, and some people, like, especially, I just generalizing here, sometimes the older people are like, what's this confusing? There's too much technical stuff involved. A laptop I got to turn on and log in. Is it a Mac? Is it Windows? Who cares? As long as it does its job, and as long as you have some video and audio going on, that's important to communicate to the people that are out there. So to the audience that are here online today, one of the things I'm challenging them to do is to, as you're paying attention, if you're taking any notes or whatever you're doing, is to understand that we care that you're here. I do care. If I had their emails, I'd send them an email after. I don't, but if I did, I would. Or maybe Bob will. But I want everybody to know how much I appreciate their time to come with us. We're not done yet, so don't leave. But anyways, is to recognize that to meet, when I'm speaking to the camera, by the way, you're wondering where I'm looking at. I'm looking at the camera. Is to recognize that I do care that they're here, and it is important to me. But it's also important to you as an organization. Because if those 5, 6 people are not here, we lose them. And eventually, now this is a kind of a relatively close-knit group. But if this was a Sunday school class, it could be a totally different dynamic. If it's an older class, a younger class, I don't care what the age is, the dynamics are all still real. And you have to factor in room sizes, people, demographics, all those different types of things to be a successful hybrid Sunday school class environment. So let me ask you a couple questions, make it a little more interactive here. Who is doing the hybrid Sunday school classes again? Do you mind doing a show of hands? Lance, got it right this time. Can you tell me what are you guys doing right now?
We have purchased Chromebooks to put in the classrooms.
Is this on? Hello? Just to make it easier.
We have set the Chromebooks in each classroom to hook up to a TV. The Chromebook has the camera on it, so it picks up not only the teacher but part of the class. And then the class can interact with the teacher as well and see the other people, both in class as well as on those online.
Are you doing it for adult classes or different ages, or what are you doing?
This is primarily, we've got 3 of our 6 adult classes that have chosen to participate in that.
Okay, awesome. Well, you just said something interesting. I heard you say it there. They have chosen to do it. Now, this is something that's real from a church administrator's perspective. Go ahead and turn off your mic so we won't have a bounce, if you don't mind. Just put that. Okay, good. One of the things is that you have to decide as a church, and you guys can do whatever the heck you want to do. It's your choice, of course. That's why we're here. But anyways, is that are you going to dictate, or are you just going to let them pick and choose? That's a fair statement, isn't it not? Is that you want to just make it happen for them. Now, for some churches, they're like, well, they just do their own thing anyways. Oh, it kills me. Oh my gosh, I get it. I understand. I've been in church a long time, like 50 years. I understand that we all want to do our own thing. The reality is that's not a way to organize and keep control, at least management control, not in a control freak type of environment of your situation. Because a lot of churches, I'm going to speak in general terms here, like have all these great software programs like ACS Realm and whatever else you use. Maybe you use Arena. I don't like Arena, but anyway, it's another issue. All kinds of programs out there, and have access to the members who have access to the content, but they just still do their Excel spreadsheets or whatever they're doing. They still do their own Facebook groups. They still isolate themselves. That's a structural management issue. That's a whole different issue for a conversation for a different day. But that's something you have to factor in. When it comes to hybrid classes, do you choose to, we're just going to make it for you? Or are we just going to, and you have chosen to do that. You're kind of letting them, you're doing it for them, right? You're providing the technology for them, but they're still getting to pick. So there's nothing wrong with that.
At this point, we're just trying to make sure that we've got a good selection of those that want to do it, and then we'll roll it out to others as we've perfected the system.
And that's really what I was going to get at is I think a lot of times people feel they need to cover everybody at one time, and they're not prepared for it. So I think it is important to plan. That's why I said in the beginning, first thing, plan it out. How are you going to dole it out? How are you going to issue it out? Test it. Find out if it's even working. Now, let me clarify. One person shows up, it's working. That's my opinion, all right? Take it or leave it. But if one person shows up, you're better than zero, all right? And so you're like, well, we only get 1 or 2 people. Okay, you got 1 or 2 people. It's going to happen, especially in a small group environment. That's going to happen. So, and there's some classes, they're all showing up in class. My father and his wife's Sunday school church, they live out in Terrell, Texas. They've been meeting in full-blown church since Father's Day, June. They have not missed a beat. Nobody's got COVID. They keep all the precautions. They put the mask on whenever they need to, but they hug everybody. I mean, they don't care about anything. It's weird. They're like, they're not even paying attention to the news. I think they're probably lucky and don't have to stress so much. Anyway, so that's interesting. All right, so anybody else Bob, you guys have hybrid classes? Are you doing Zoom, or was that you're doing, or?
We're doing Zoom, but the unique part is that the unique part is that the teacher actually in one class is at home and he's zooming into the class, so it's like a reverse. So the class is present, but the teacher's not. Yeah. That's because he's a gentleman that's from Haiti, and he's had four of his family members have died with COVID. So let's say he's a little nervous about it. So the fact that, but that was a little reverse technology. So of course he shows up on the big screen, and they're at the church watching. So it's a little different, but there again, the teacher had a laptop, but that's Judy Stamey, so she's good to go. So she's been very good about helping that situation. So it's a little bit different. It's like a reverse, but it is working for them right now. And so, and of course, I don't think they necessarily, like, they have a laptop that they're watching, but they don't really interact with the teacher much at all. It's more lecture style. Okay. So that's the other thing, is the style has been different. So.
Yeah, that will change depending on that's what we always ask about your format in your class is, what is your format? Do you have a lecture environment? Then you detect it's a little different. I mean, how you handle it. If it's a circled environment where you're kind of in a little circle, then how you have your camera moving around or whatever, it would change a little bit, So there are a lot of variables, and people are like, well, let's just make it work on one thing will fit for everything. It doesn't exactly work like that if you want to do it right. So you may have some variations. We had a church, exact same story, had their teacher and husband and wife teacher, an older class, absolutely loved. They've been so involved. They're financially involved. I mean, they're really involved in the church. But his wife, the main teacher's wife, who's older as well, has health issues and cannot go out of the house. Essentially, it's dangerous, except for the hospital or doctor's offices. And so they will not come to church, but they're like, well, we want to still teach. So they're doing exactly what you said, Bob. They're teaching virtually, but there's people in person that are in the class, and there's still some virtual people in the virtual environment at the same time, and he's not even in the room. So yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities when it comes to that. What has been your members' responses to what's been going on? Those who have, or you may not even know the answer, but have you asked anybody? How's it going? Are you enjoying the time? Is it helpful? What kind of issues you're having? Any response to that? We got 2 guys. The answer is probably you haven't asked yet. A lot. I don't know. Maybe you have. I don't know. Well, I mean, have you actually talked to the people who are meeting online, like the regular online people? And again, it hasn't happened for a long time, so it's kind of new, I think. But what I'm trying to get at is, feel free to be intentional about communicating to those, like I said earlier, to the people online. Is their experience what they want it to be? You know, and it's.
We've kind of kept tabs on it, found that it's not like in person, but it's the best choice right now for them.
And it depends on the person. For some people, they're like, I love it. I don't have to get on my pajamas. I got my coffee cup, I got my pajamas, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm enjoying Sunday school class. They're in perfect heaven. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. We've always, people are like going, well, that takes away from our financial giving and everything else. I don't know about you. Now, we've been online a lot with our church because they kept changing things on us. But our as a family, we chose financial giving has actually gone up. And our church has actually done really well with the financial giving because of the online platform. So it is kind of cool. And we're going in the third session, we're going to talk about the interactive of online giving and things like that in the live stream environment as well. So one last thing here, and then we're going to take a little break for the second session, I think it's important, and we only have a few people here that you've kind of doled it out yet, and we're all new at all this, so don't just understand that, it's important to pay attention to the statistics, the analytics, everything that's involved in this process of understanding what are people doing. I actually am so much of a control freak, I like to know if it's male or female, what their age is, the demographics. I did a study in a church, and I can't mention the church because you probably all know who it is, but it's an older congregational church, and I studied, and I don't look at individuals' information because I care less about it, but it was all generalization, but we looked at giving patterns and attendance patterns, and to identify, because they really knew that they were going to run out of business if they don't have enough people showing up to church because everybody is older. So out of that church, 70% of those people were 70 years and older. And out of those people, almost all the money came from that 70%. You know what I'm talking about. All right, we have those, that's why we have multiple services sometimes. We have a contemporary and a traditional, because that's where all the money is. That sounds so horrible, doesn't it? But the reality is that particular church recognized, and luckily they brought us in as a consultant to help them understand and how to change that. How can we bring in a younger congregation? And one of the things I did was I walked around the whole building. I mean, I took my iPad and I took pictures of everything. It was disgusting. The rooms were dirty. Everything felt old. I mean, I felt older being in the building. In the foyer of that building, and there's a reason I'm bringing this up. In the foyer of the building, there were blankets. Some of you may already have these. I don't want to offend somebody else, but little blankets. And the blankets, because the old people get cold. I was like, I walked into your foyer of your church, I felt older. Nothing wrong with feeling older, by the way. I am older. It's okay. But the point is that if you're a younger person or a younger family, you're going to go, yeah, I'll look at some other options, because we have a lot of choices in the Metroplex. A whole bunch of them. So we can just go right down the street to another church. So we end up giving our proposal and our discussion and a consultation and everything, the whole presentation. I asked the pastor, do you really want me to be honest? He goes, as honest as possible. And I showed him everything. It was pretty nasty. And they're like, wow, we didn't even see our own building the way you're seeing it. The different set of eyes. And so, believe it or not, about a month later, they brought in a bunch of volunteers and remodeled the whole foyer. It was like, totally night and day. It changed everything. And then they eventually got a different pastor, and that changed everything as well. But anyways, so they have done really well since then. But I thought it was kind of cool. The point is, we have to be willing to see outside of our normal. I pay attention to statistics a lot. I also know from seminary that I went to Southwestern that statistics can be whatever you want them to be. Or I could give you a set of numbers, I can give her a set of numbers, and you can interpret them a little differently because that's the way stats work. They're true facts. But the reality is that we also have to recognize that we have to be able to understand, how do we understand the stats? And as church administrators, we are usually number people, so that's good. Any other questions at all about this first session? All right, we are going to take a brief break. You want more coffee, whatever is back there. There are bathrooms down the hall. Those are the nicer bathrooms if you want a little nicer. Ones around the corner, not so nice. They told me to say that, by the way. And so that's why I'm okay with that. But there's a men's and a women's bathroom down there, and there's a men's and women's bathroom down there as well. The women's, you got to go around the corner and you'll see it. All right? We'll be back in just a few minutes. We'll do next session.
brought me on in August 3 years ago. In September, they voted to do a $2.5 million repair project.
All right, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and start again. If you want to have a seat. Ooh, sorry, I literally was caught. We're ready to start. Wasn't about you. It's just you got the drift. Got a lot to cover in a short period of time. I could do this all day long. All right, whenever you are ready, we'll begin. It's interesting. One of the things I told you from the beginning that we're probably going to have technical glitches. Guess what? It happens. This is not the original computer I had. All kinds of issues, and there were some sound issues for the Zoomers. So if you're wondering why some of the people have disappeared, is that we're also streaming this on our Facebook, MinistryCraft Facebook and YouTube channel as well, and Twitch, but that's a different reason. The reason we're doing that is, we're making sure it works. But second of all, it was a good thing because all the chat moderator did was say, okay, you're having sound issues, check out the YouTube channel, it's working great, and they're able to hear it all. So guess what? Having backup plans really does work. And so this one for their situation, as far as being able to, they can't now on YouTube, they can still chat if they wanted to. They can't, we don't see their faces on YouTube, which we'll get to that live streaming afternoon. So, by the way, Kevin Walker, thank you. It's good to see you again. I've known him like forever, like long time. I used to be at Southcliff many moons ago. All right, I'm going to say a prayer before we start, and then we're going to jump right in real quick. Lord, thank you again for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to be here for all of us, and we just ask that each of us will recognize that you are Lord of our lives and that we enjoy just being a Christian and having a good time. Amen. One of the things that God taught me years ago, if somebody gives you an opportunity to pray, you take it. I have a bunch of kids, and my little boys, my oldest is, my daughter's 25. We have a couple of 23-year-olds. 20-year-old, 14-year-old, and 12-year-old. There's a huge gap, I know. And but those little boys, I really tried hard to help them to understand that praying is a privilege and an opportunity to do that. And if they get a chance to do it, because like I don't want to pray in public. Heck yeah, man! Somebody says who has to pray? You should be the first hand up. Anyways, our second topic: churches' use of social media to impact the community. Man, this was the topic that is so broad. I'm going, how in the world am I going to condense this down to 50 minutes? Probably not going to do a very good job. So we'll see how it works, but I'll do the best I can. Let me use the word marketing. Uh-oh, did I just use the M word? Churches, historically speaking, don't like the word marketing. The reality is, guess what? You market all day long, and your main market is, what's your number one most important, in my opinion, if you don't know my opinion. But what do you think is the most important marketing tool you have in your church? Anybody? People. Thank you. Yes. People themselves, human beings that go to your church are actively involved, whether it be online or whether it be in person. They're your best marketing tool, in my opinion. All right, how do you mobilize them is another issue. And so some of that we're going to talk about today and how you choose to use the social media platforms. And I'll be asking various questions, but it is important that churches market their services. We have, in a sense, what I mean is that we need to let people know we exist. We are in the Metroplex. You know how many churches are in the Metroplex? Over 4,000 churches in just the DFW area. Now, cross-denominational lines, you don't understand that. 4,000 just here. In the country, you have over 400,000. There's a whole lot of options out there. All right, this church here runs about 100, 125. That actually is the average of churches in the country, 100 people-ish, maybe a little less. So the churches are from Travis and other churches, like my church, Northside Baptist, has, 4,000 or 5,000 or something like that, ridiculous amount. However big your church is, those are anomalies. Those are not actually normal. Those are just big churches. But the need, whether you're a small church like Richland Hills, or if you're a big church like Travis, I'll just use you as an example because you're right there, is it doesn't make a difference. You all need to let people know that you're there and you're there for a reason. Ultimately, the main thing that I believe is very important is to have that you're pointing people to Jesus. That's critical. But there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and so we're going to see how that goes. Is social media, you can answer real quick, is social media marketing? Is it marketing? Probably. You're going to say yes to that one? I put yes in my notes. Is social media about developing relationships? Yes, that's kind of a duh. So do churches work on relationships between members and pointing people to Christ? That's kind of a weird question, but is that part of our what we do? Do we work on relationships with people as churches, as church staff? Probably the answer is yes. All right, and I'm not just trying to do the direct comparison, but the reality is that our churches are made up of relationships. If you're the sound team, everybody knows the sound guys. Or almost always guys, but anyways, they're so nerdy, it's so ridiculous, and they're like a different kind of nerd, right, Ray? Ray goes, I'm a sound guy, yeah, amen. And so, but God's given them a gift to understand technology a certain way, and so we love to have them work together and do their thing. The praise team, worship team, praise and worship, whatever you call it, and the choir groups, they're all different, but they're all important to the part of how we expose the church into what we are and what we're about. So we're going to get right into this one. This is a very practical application, hopefully, and I got a lot of notes. We're going to go through this pretty quick. What social media platforms should we use? Now, I'm going to ask you a couple questions in here. Just real quickly, how many people here in your churches, not you personally, but in your church, as from a church perspective, use Facebook? Probably almost everybody, all right? And we'll talk about that. How many people use YouTube? Almost everybody. How many people use Instagram? Quite a few people, probably all the youth. But anyways, a different issue. How many people use email? Just about everybody. How many people use text messaging? Almost everybody. How many people use Google Ads? Like no. Okay, one people does. One people. Yeah. Okay, that's a whole different issue. We'll talk about that at the very end. All right, so let's talk about the different groups I just mentioned, different platforms, or whatever you want to call it. Facebook. Who in regards to the church, you're speaking from the church's perspective as best as you can. Who are the people on Facebook in relationship to your church? Who are they? Does that make sense? Is that badly worded? The people that you communicate with on Facebook that are connected to your church, what is your relationship to them, I guess I'm trying to say? They're members. They're directly connected probably to your church or indirectly connected through somebody else to your church. In other words, they have a easy traceable connection probably back to you as a church. All right, again, I'm speaking from a church. I'm not talking about personal relationships. It's a totally different issue, and it is connected, but it is. In Facebook, you have people are connected somehow to the church. They're members of the church, things like that. Also, on Facebook, you probably, and does anybody ever do Facebook ads? Like pay money for it? Most of you do. Does it work? The response almost always is this. Like, I don't really know the answer to that question. We're just forking out money and hoping it works. The reality is that you should kind of know if it works. You got to figure. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds. I can easily say it, but it's harder to identify whether it actually works. It's just like Coca-Cola. Does advertising work? Guess what? It obviously works. They spend billions of dollars under advertising, and they sell an astronomical amount of Coke, because they advertise, just like all the people on other shows, other things. All right, YouTube. Who are the people that you're communicating with on YouTube? That you have your churches have direct communication with? Anybody? Yes, Ray? Oh, is there a question? Oh, sorry. Thought he was raising his hand. He's going to answer. You're welcome to answer.
Same people that look at Facebook.
Okay.
Are probably the people you're communicating with on YouTube.
What are you going to say?
Well, I think we pick up some, now that we're streaming online, we pick up members or people who during the week or at other times go, what's this Rock City all about? And so we pick up people in other states.
Yeah.
Things like that. Just out of curiosity or like my family members, hey, you want to see a good message? Go log on.
Yeah.
It's there. So.
My mom's 81. I've already said that before. She lives 0.6 miles from me. I did that. I brought her close so I could take care of her. and it's an honor. You have a question? Okay, one sec. Is that one of the things I have found is that she was COVID hit, and she was like, I'm not going to church. And of course, they shut it all down. There were really old people in their church, so that made sense. When they started opening back up again, Mom, you can go to church again. I'm not going to go. I'm not comfortable. She's 81. I'm not taking a chance. She's so scared when she walks out and she wears her mask so close, and that's okay. But guess what? She's on a whole lot of YouTube channels. I did teach her that one on her big, huge TV. Made sure she could navigate. Man, it took me forever just to teach her how to move down on this stupid remote control. Anyways, and you all know what I'm talking about. So it is funny because I have a lot of patience, and my wife is like, really? How long are you teaching? But I'm determined in that particular situation, and it is a very isolated situation, to make sure that person is not isolated. Now, as a church, can we do the same thing? Can we help those people, whether it be older or younger, to not become isolated through the media that we have available to us? Absolutely. But you have got to be intentional. You've got to, as a church staff, say, we want to do this. We need to have a plan. Either you have a plan or you bring somebody in and can teach you how to do a plan, how to implement that kind of communication, that level of interaction. One of my churches I work with has a bunch of old people. I work with a lot of churches with a bunch of old people. This church has a lot of old people. And they don't have, a lot of them don't have YouTube channels, or couldn't tell you how to do YouTube channel. So they actually put their live stream on a USB stick and brought it to their homes. And they have TVs. They all have big TVs now. They stick in the side there, and they taught them how to put the USB stick in the side of their TV, and they can watch the service. Now, they don't get to watch it live, but they get to watch it the next morning, Monday morning. And so and there's a point to this. Then they went back on, I think, Friday, picked up the USB sticks, wiped them all out, and repeated the same pattern next week. Now, what are they doing? What is the value and goal of that in your mind? Oh my gosh. It changed everything for those people. They not only did they get to watch the service was just a bonus. They got to have a live human being connect with them. During COVID, that was huge. And I'm hoping they continue it. I don't know if they're going to or not. I have no idea if they have continued. I haven't checked in the last few weeks. But the idea was that they recognized the need to have that social media connection, even though it's not your traditional Facebook type of connection. It was still a social media connection. It's just different. Is there a question?
Just a comment. If you'll remember to repeat any comments or questions that are asked to engage the online community because they can't hear them.
Okay, I forgot that. Okay, I will do that. Thank you very much for the reminder. So yeah, YouTube. By the way, YouTube. Yes, Bob had mentioned some crossover people. Yes, there are some crossovers. We know that we're all crossovers. If we watch both those things. But the reality is that more and more people are never going to be in your building, ever. They're never going to be in your state, ever. Maybe not even in your country, ever. Awesome! God has given us an opportunity to reach the whole world. Is that a commandment or a thing in the Bible? Don't we talk about that? Reaching the whole world? We have this incredible opportunity to do so, and the technology of the world gave it to us. Don't waste the crisis, people. I really believe that God gave us a gift when he gave us COVID. He gave us a gift in a sense, and what I mean by that is that we're not going to waste a crisis that he has given us today. Don't waste it. Take advantage of it and run with it and see what God's going to use it, because I promise you he will. All right, Instagram. You said almost everybody raised their hand on Instagram. I was kind of shocked on that one. Now, you may not use Instagram, but you may or may not. But so a couple people who use Instagram in your churches, what groups are using them? Anybody know? Youth? Anybody else going to know? Anybody know the answer to that question?
We all do. One thing about Instagram, when you put it on Instagram, it feeds Facebook and everything else at once, so that gets the message to whoever's looking at what.
Most of the technologies do that now. So there's ways to push it all. You push it in one location, it pushes everywhere. And the live stream, we'll talk about that specifically. That's what I told you, some crossover. And so some people are using, like I use Twitch. Twitch, anybody know what Twitch is? You've heard of Twitch is a gaming platform. And if you use Church Online, which I'm going to talk about in the next session, but if you use Church Online platform for your online platform where people can chat and all kinds of stuff in there, it doesn't do a YouTube code real quickly. You can't do it ahead of time because there's reasons for that. But you can use Twitch ahead of time. And you can do a posted scheduled Twitch code, put that in there, and get you the same results. And be like, oh, how did you do that? Because it's magic. And I learned that from Ray's church, who taught me how to do that. So it's like, awesome. Thank you, Ray, and his people. With Instagram, popular with 67% between 18 to 29-year-olds. That's the main market for the Instagram group. 85% of them prefer Instagram. Right after that, followed by Snapchat. Anybody do Snapchat? Oh, that's exhausting to me. Just take pictures, done. Take a picture, take done. So it's all about that. Email. Most adults still use email. You guys all still use email, at least probably in your churches, more than likely. Text messages. How do you use text messages directly to affect your people? Anybody? Do you do text blast or individual text or anything? Probably a little bit. Somebody's doing it. The youth are doing it for sure, almost for sure. At least, and then text message. That's kind of old style. But anyways, it's still effective because it's a direct connection between you and I. Whether it's a blasted text message to all of you at one time or to you individually, it's still a connected thing. We're all in our text groups that we all hang out with our friends, and like we just love getting those goofy messages and stupid memes and all kinds of goofy things. But it develops a relationship, and that's what it's all about. By the way, just a sidebar, if you're not using Google Ads for your church, you're wasting a whole bunch of money for nothing. Google Ads is free for your churches. You can do $10,000 worth of ads every month for free, no cost. I promise you that. And so I'm not going to talk about how to do it today. You can ask and email me a question, and I'll walk you through it. It's very simple, and it doesn't cost you anything to use it. Why would you not use something that's free, especially when there's a whole lot of money involved in it? What are some of the pitfalls of social media? Real briefly, I'm going to mention these. It's easy to put your personal opinions online. It is. If you represent the church, if you're there, does anybody have any social media a staff member that's actually a staff member? And they may play multiple roles in that job as well. But usually there's somebody kind of like, you're the youngest, or you're the most technical savvy person. You're the social media person by default. That like happens like all the time. But they got to be careful that the content, as I said earlier, control the narrative. They got to make sure that the content that they put online represents who you are as a church, not represents their opinion, but represents the church's opinion or thoughts, whatever it is. So it's easy to put, these are some of the pitfalls. It's easy to put your personal opinions online. Remember, for the church, it means to represent the church, not your opinion. You must control the narrative. Don't get caught up in online arguments. Man alive. I'm not sure about you, but if you watch any news right now, it is exhausting. Everybody's fighting with everybody about stupid stuff half the time. But the reality is they're feeding off of it. Now, can we take advantage of that? Probably. But anyways, that's a whole different issue. But the point is, don't buy into it. As a church, don't buy into that. Now, if you want to do it personally, that's up to you. I don't care. But if you get caught up in that, it's going to affect your church some way or another. Somebody's going to use it against you at some point. Don't only post, visit our church. We wish you'd come to our church. Here's pictures of our church. Man, that's not enough. People, they want to know who you are as a people. They want to know your worship style. They want to know who the people that are there, not just your staff members, but your people are there. Pictures, make sure you don't post pictures that you don't have a right to post. If it's copyrighted pictures, a lot of people are like, well, that's a free picture. I Googled it. It must be free. And that's not true. And there's ways that I can show you if you need help with that. I can tell you how to identify which is license-free pictures. Don't put, this is kind of a duh, but don't put inappropriate content. You're thinking, well, how would you even say something like that? You'd be surprised what churches post. I had a church in Mesquite, Texas, that had a Hispanic church in the church. An Anglo church and Hispanic church, at the same time. And there was a huge rift between the Hispanic church and the Anglo church. And they're in the same building. I mean, it was bad, nasty bad. And what the Hispanic church posted, I saw it, was not comfortable at all about what they said about the other church. I don't care what I'm sorry, that's wrong in every level. We don't need to break down our churches. We need to lift our churches up. So don't put things like that down. And man, when I got, again, there's my client, both are my clients, so it's challenging. And so I talked to the church that was being abused, and they said to me, please, can you just erase it all? No, I can't. However, should you ignore it? Absolutely not. You don't leave it out there for the negativity to grow. And they did, we worked through them and walked through it, and they were able to respond to it and deal with it and move on. but it was not healthy. It's amazing what people post. They just get emotional about it. Oh, I don't like this person. The pastor's message was horrible, blah, blah, blah. Oh, my goodness. Crazy stuff. Don't bash your members. I've actually seen that. Churches posting about members in the church. Like, you got to be kidding me. And then make sure you have verified your content. You probably all heard of Snopes or something like that. There's a lot of baloney out there, a lot of fake news. Don't just post it because somebody else posted it. It must be true. Be careful you verify it. I'm talking about from accounts from your church. If you want to do it from your own personal account, more power to you. I don't suggest it either, but I just think you should verify your content as well. And it goes on. All right, let me read this little line here. Modern church outreach strategies need to include some sort of social media presence. Church social media has become expected, so if your church doesn't join in, you may be perceived as outdated by potential church visitors. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know 100%, but I do believe that there's some validity to that statement, is that to recognize that if you're not online communicating to people on a regular basis, you're not paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world, and we'll talk about statistics here in a second here. What are the advantages of using social media? Social media is where people can find your church. Social media is where members on the platform can be together. All right. You can use it to influence the world. Those are some advantages you have. An average person in this country spends an average about 2 hours a day on social media. That's an average. That's insane. That means that some of you don't spend like any time on there. That means that somebody's the opposite of you, which means they're probably spending 4 hours a time. So you can do ministry announcements. You can do online giving things. By the way, don't always post, oh, hey, to give to our church, here's our link. Next post, give to our church, here's our link. Yeah, that's not going to fly really well. You want to do it once in a while, but don't make it so ridiculous. I actually had a church that tried that. I'm going, yeah, you're going to ruin everybody. Nobody's going to pay attention to you. So members travel. They're out all the time. By using social media technologies, you have the ability to communicate with them all the time. We used to, I worked with a church who did did anybody still do a church newsletter, like a printed newsletter, like actual printed newsletter? It's a lot of money. Now, most people go to a quarterly newsletter. I had a church that did a weekly newsletter. And I actually they asked me to do a cost analysis. They never took the time to actually figure out how much it cost them. How much does it cost to do the weekly newsletter? Again, this was years ago. And it was over $50,000. I mean, supplies, power, everything else. I was like, and I asked the question, does it work? And the response was, I don't know. I was like, no, it doesn't work. People are throwing your stuff away. I'm not offending everybody. I'm going to, but now once a quarter or something like that, that's probably different. But these weekly stuff, no getting. So I always said, send relevant content to relevant people. Send information to people that they care about. And our church newsletters have traditionally been very generic, and in regards to just a bunch of content, half the stuff we don't read. So I read what I want and throw the rest away. So that's important. Social media is inexpensive marketing, and it gives you direct feedback, or can give you direct feedback. And one thing that I've been asked a lot of times is, when we get in bad reviews on our Google places about our church, have anybody ever got a bad review on Google before? You're like, I don't want to answer that question. You're like going, can you get rid of it? Can you delete it? Man, don't delete it. Take advantage of it. Run with it and saying, how can reach out, because you can rebuild that relationship, especially if it's nasty. You can work it out, but you have to respond to it. People are like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the bad things about our church. You got to deal with it. So those are important. That's part of your social media. All right. So how do you do social media? Everybody's like, well, duh, Tim, I'm on my phone all the time. I can do this all day long. Sure. So let me talk about some of those variations. I'm talking about from a church's perspective. Facebook. Everybody knows Facebook, right? Nobody here okay, everybody knows it. All right. It's free still, and hopefully always will be. And allows people to register their profiles and send videos and send messages and keep in touch with friends and family and other people, right? We all know that, all right? But you want to be able to communicate from a church's perspective, in my opinion, you want to be able to meet people where they're at. I just looked at the stats yesterday, just to update my numbers, because I keep having to update it all the time. Facebook has over 2.7, as of like last month, 2.7 million active users per month. How many people in this world? 7, 8 billion now? Oh, I said million. I meant billion. I'm sorry. billion. I just said the wrong number. I don't know how many people we have in this world. 7 billion now or something like that? Something of that nature. That means like almost at least 1 out of every 4 people were on Facebook every month. About 1.7 billion daily users. I said 1.7, almost 1.8 billion people are on Facebook every single day, all the time. Holy cow, that's a lot of people. And a lot of them are your church members. We all know that. So don't ignore that platform. That's an important platform to be a part of. Now, they're getting real political right now. It's getting really frustrating. So don't go down that road, and I'm not going to go down that road. But just understand it's still a valid platform. You know, we're not taking away all of our rights yet. So we'll see how that goes later on. And I may have a different point of view 3 years from now. But right now, I'm going to tell you, just still be involved in that platform. You can build ridiculously wonderful relationships, and a lot of you have individually with people outside, inside your church and outside your church, certainly outside the weekly environment. In most cases, churches have been Sunday morning, let's say 9 to 12. We got church, Sunday school. Sometimes we have church, Sunday school, church. We flip them around. Then we have a Wednesday night, thing going on, the youth meet, all that kind of choir meets. Sometimes a Tuesday night, Bible study, whatever. And some of you guys have all kinds of stuff going on. But this gives you an opportunity, social media gives you an opportunity to communicate to people all the time, 24 hours a day. And people are up a lot late at night. It's funny, have you ever been online and you just want to send somebody a messenger thingy? And it's like you've been up like since 2 o'clock in the morning for some reason or other, and you just send a message, and they respond back to you? Like, oops, I wasn't expecting a response back. I thought your phone would be facing down or something like that. Because they're going through whatever they're going through at that point. Years ago, I used to tell people that they should have, this was early on, that they should have the ability to chat on their websites, because people will come to your websites, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit here, and I said, they said, why? Because it gives you, some people are not comfortable calling you. Some people are totally comfortable. My kids, Dad, don't call. Who calls anybody anymore? That's ridiculous. Send me a text, or send me a messenger, or what's up, or whatever the heck they're using these days. It's all over. There's so many things that it's hard to keep up. So think about that. So social media helps you stay relevant. One of the things is the digital forms of outreach may seem intimidating if you're unfamiliar with these methods. Facebook and other social media platforms are important to understand. Now, it's important for all of us in this room and those people online to understand it. Maybe, maybe not. All right, I understand that. But it is important for somebody in your church to know how to do it. So if you're not the person who's tasked to do it, find somebody who's tasked to do it. For some people, they outsource it. We actually can do that and have do some social media platforms for some of our clients, our web clients. And they like going, we don't even understand any of that stuff. Just these are the general content we want to work with. Can you make it happen? So that's part of our services as an organization. It's very important. It is also a platform. Facebook is also a good platform for evangelism and outreach. I don't have time to do a whole version of this, but I'm going to tell you a super short version of my story. Years ago, before Facebook and before any of you guys were online, probably in the early '80s, middle '80s, I was online. I lived in San Diego. Anybody know what a BBS is? It's a bulletin board system. It's a computer software I had on my computer, and I had a modem. You ever seen war games where they put the little modem down? I had one of those. I was a nerd, just like everybody else. But we could hack them all day long. But anyway, it's a whole different story. I just said that online. Anyways, one of the things was really cool was it was a one-to-one relationship. So if you connected to my system, that was the only connection I could have. It was one phone line, you got connected. You disconnected, immediately he would connect to it, or somebody else would connect to it. San Diego is one of the largest BBSs in the all of San Diego. Active 24/7. I worked second shift. I was online all night because I'd get home at midnight. I would just go straight online and just talk to people. And one particular night I'll never forget, changed my life forever. A guy comes on. He typed so slow, he's killing me because I could type so fast. I'm like, oh my goodness, type your name in, please. He said, Robert. So I got it in. And then I went to chat mode and I scared the crap out of him. I mean, I'm not allowed to use that word. Anyways, he was terrified. Now, I didn't know at that point he was scared. But let me tell you what happened here. I started to chat with him, this guy named Robert, which I'd never met before at that point. And we talked for about 4 hours, from 2 to 6 or something like that. It's a ridiculous amount of time. Of course, I said most of it because I could talk fast and he could not. But anyways, and he kept asking me, do you have anything like white snow? I was like, what the heck is white snow? I don't even know what it is. He was like, he was looking for cocaine. He was looking for a cocaine dealer. I'm not I don't use drugs. So I figured it out eventually. He's talking about cocaine. I'm going, this is crazy. Long story short, I was like, brother, you don't need that. I'm a Christian. I knew that was not probably an ideal situation. And whatever reason, the Lord put in my heart that moment in time to share the gospel with him. All right? A couple of weeks later, I got to meet Robert in person at a Godfather's Pizza place with a bunch of nerds. He showed up, and I invited him. He was so scared, sweating, pouring down. And I said, hey, welcome, brother. And we just loved on each other, and I became good friends. And he became my very best friend. To this day, he's still one of my very best friends. He lives in Portland, Oregon area now. But what happened that night was I shared my version of what God had taught me to share. A simple presentation that was so simple to a guy who I did not know from Adam. But I knew it worked because I'd been online so much that I had done a lot of conversations. What I had found out years later was that was the very last night Robert ever touched drugs. And he became a Christian, and he went on mission trips. He was active in his church. His whole life changed because of one conversation that somebody decided to do online. I promise you it works. And I could tell you story after story after story after story of something similar to that. And I told you the short version of that story, of where your life, you can have an impact as a church, certainly as an individual, in your church or however you represent yourself. Don't avoid it. Engage with it. Be a part of it. All right, YouTube. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Any questions about Facebook real quick? YouTube is a different breed. It's a different type of thing. It's owned by Google. Everybody knows that, or probably knows that. But one thing is important about YouTube and social media content is, and most people, when I say, well, we do YouTube, is that they do their live stream to YouTube. And that's probably right? You all push your YouTube streams. But do any of you do like small Sunday school classes or Bible studies or any small segments of content to YouTube, or is it all just your church live stream? So what they said was they invited people in their members of the church to share those stories of their lives and what's going on, and it gives people hope. Moments of hope is what they call it, right? What an awesome thing. And they're short, 5 minutes. 5 minutes long stories. We're seeing a lot of that now, that kind of thing. This church does a short segment, kind of a ministry Bible study, I guess you want to call it. I have my other churches I work with, they do a message from the pastor, just an afternoon briefing, basically, just kind of giving them a word of encouragement. I love it. It's, man, for me who's so ADD, it works out perfect because I get 5 minutes of time, I get into it, and I'm always telling these guys, man, this is awesome. This is so relevant to me today. And if it's relevant to me, it's probably relevant to a lot of people. And so YouTube is a good way to push that. And we'll talk about the streaming component as well. But consistently putting content online not only does it give you more people to reach, but it also develops a trust relationship with people. They learn to trust who you are as an organization. Everybody puts their sermons. That's good, doing that. But you can also find inspiration from other people. If some people say, well, I don't know what to put online, I can give you a list, and I'll give you a list. But I think a lot of people struggle with, well, I don't know what to put online. Just do a YouTube channel search if you have to. And you'd be surprised the cool stuff and the creative things people are doing. Some are goofy. Some are inappropriate. Don't do those. All right? But the point is there's so much content that you can hit out there. YouTube is so into buying Google is so into much of the video on demand that they spent billions of dollars invested into that product, in that service, because they know that people are more apt to go to their YouTube channel first, or Facebook, but oftentimes YouTube, depending on the circumstance. If you want to fix your plumbing, where do you go? Go to YouTube. Want to fix that light switch? You go to YouTube. If you want to know more about Jesus, hopefully they go to YouTube. But if your content's not there, it won't work because there's not enough content out there, and we're getting squashed out among other things as well. But find inspiration from other people. I think that's important. Also use what you got. Many pastors, especially the smaller churches, like, I can't compete against the big ones. We don't have that production value. I don't care. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just doesn't have to be perfect, people. You need to be able to recognize that it is important that the content is relevant and fresh and current for the people. And once you get past that, I don't have to have it polished look. A lot of times people prefer the unpolished version of you. I had a pastor who always did his thing in his his office. He got the books behind him, and every pastor's got a lot of books. And he got his books in his office, and he was confused about how the technology, so we set him up a real simple camera setup, and he was live streaming just short segments. And at first he was like, he's like almost like apologizing, like, you think people care? No, what the heck? We all care. It's just a matter of whether we care is relevant to us at that point. And so he has told me since he went live a few months ago now how much impact those short segments are making, more of an impact than his sermons are making, because they're personal, they're individualized, they're almost not that he identifies people necessarily, but he seems to be reaching the heart of people more effectively than the preaching that he does from the platform, because they're short and they're intentional about that. So use what you got, because God's giving you a lot. It helps people to trust you and keep you engaged. That's one thing that YouTube definitely does. Offer questions and answers. Sometimes people are like, I want to know more about the church. Just have a little social interaction with each other. Just two people sitting in front of a chair having a conversation. If you got the technology to do a nice production value, nothing wrong with that. If nothing else, stick your iPhone up and you're good to go. It can be as simple as that. You can upload a high-quality video, but there's something about people feeling like a part of a real community that keeps them engaged. That's the difference, in my opinion, and that's what makes a big difference. You can do topical content, interviews, various other things. People want to know who you are as a church, past the Sunday morning experience, because if they buy into your church on Sunday and they buy into your church throughout the week, you have a trickle-down effect that's going to help you. They're more than likely to be more engaged. They're more likely to volunteer. They're more than likely to support you financially. There's a lot of things that happen when people are involved in your church. The fringe people, they may be givers, but that's all they do. We always have the people, well, they're really heavy givers, but they don't do anything in the church. They just show up Sunday morning and they give a check. You know some people like that probably. So that's fine, but understand that most people are looking for the full package here as well. Also, remember that personal is very powerful. I think it's more powerful than just a professional look. And the content does matter most. I've always said, like forever, as long as I've been doing this, content is king. That is true on your website. That is true on your social media. That is true in live stream. Your content is king, and that's important. What do you actually do with social media for Instagram? Now, most of you, like when I ask you that, you're like, well, I don't really know what they do. It's just some of the teenagers are doing it. And let me just give you some basic 3 points here about Instagram. They have this approach. Their tagline, I don't know if you know this, tagline for Instagram is capture and share the world's moments. That's their tagline. And Instagram is all about just that, moments, visual moments. All right? And so they have they have 4 words. Take us with you. They want you, people who are involved in Instagram want to be involved in your lives or your church's life. They want to be a part of that process. So being consistent and keep it simple, that's important. Don't make it production out of it every time. Just if you're out walking through nature and maybe you're the minister of education and you want to share something that God's given you a heart to share, why don't you just do it right now? Now you can do this on all the platforms, you know that, but I'm just talking about this. I had the fortunate many years ago, to Israel, and I've been all over the world and traveled all over the place, and I've been very lucky. But I don't know about you. If you've ever been to Israel, it will if you didn't, you got something wrong. It changes your perspective of the Bible. It totally does. When I was sitting in the Garden of Eden, it was not the Garden of Eden. That's the wrong place. Thank you, Garden of Gethsemane. I was like, not the Garden of Eden, wrong place. I didn't find it. I wish I did. But the Garden of Gethsemane, it broke me down. All I could see was, just Jesus sitting there going, I don't want to do this tomorrow, but I got to. Tim needs me to do it. I mean, that's my version of it. I'm kind of modifying, but you get the idea. It was so real. When I took my son to New York to go to NYU, which is a scary thought anyways, I was using a lot of Periscope back then, which is another online streaming service, and I just was streaming all this content, and people were interacting with me about me being in the different parks I was in and hanging out with my son, because I knew I was getting ready to let him go, become an adult, and let him go forever. It's hard, and it's still hard. He still lives in New York, loves it there. He's been there for, 4 or 5 years now. But engagement, like, comments, responding, following other people, getting involved in their lives. It gets them to involve in your life, so you follow them as well. And then with Instagram, they're real big on, you've seen this before, hashtag. Hashtag's about searching. If you don't know what hashtag is, it's basically if I hashtag green juice. I know somebody in this room who drinks some green juice for their health. If she's looking for green juice or green anything, more than likely that hashtag has a chance of showing up. It's a search mechanism, and it's very popular on Instagram as well. So now the question I get asked all the time is, how much time do I need to spend on this thing called social media? Forgot to start my clock. Okay, I'll figure it out. How much time is it going to take? How much time of my time is it going to take? Well, it may not take any of your time. It may take some of you. Some of you are doing the social media, but it's as much time as it needs. Well, I don't have that much time. Then rearrange your schedule. Find a way, or figure out a way, or find some money to help pay for somebody to do it, or something, whatever it takes to do it, because it's so important, in my opinion. Whatever time it takes to be successful. It depends on the church size. It does have some play into it, and your church staff size. So if you don't have if you're a small church like this church, they don't have the personnel to do a lot of social media output. They just don't. It's just the personnel is not there. It's a small church. Some of you guys are much bigger churches. You can find a way to do it. Or you may already be doing it. That's fine. But let me give you some basic numbers. These are things that you can find online as well. How much time should you spend on your website, which we really haven't talked about, but it is a social media platform. I believe about 5 hours a week. I mean, if you do it right, you're probably going to spend about 5 hours a week. And you're like, well, I can do it in an hour. Then you're probably not doing enough, more than likely. But I don't want to judge. How much time should we spend on Facebook? A couple hours a week, probably, like literally. Overall, a couple of hours a week would be appropriate to actually effectively post videos and content. How much time should I spend on YouTube? 1 to 2 hours, and that's not counting the streaming. I'm talking about engaging content and getting content ready for that. Instagram, 1 to 3 hours. People, that really depends on the age group as well. Emails. Do any of you still send emails out to your members? I hope almost everybody raised their hand, but they didn't. I am a strong, is that the right word? Strong proponent for using email. It still works. Our age group definitely still uses email. So don't ignore it as it's not hip anymore. Who cares? It still works. You can give them a lot of good direct content through email. And if you do email blast or anything like that at all, make sure your platform does it well. Shouldn't cost you any money, that's for sure. If you're paying for it, then you got the wrong platform. And then the biggest challenge that churches have with email platforms sending out is management of the email accounts. Now, when I first started 20 years ago, this company, over 20 years ago now, it was horrendous to handle the email management because people change their email account like every 3 weeks or every 3 months or something. But didn't have Gmail back then. But whatever, SBC Global to other not Files, but other companies kept switching their email account. It was ridiculous. To this day and age, everybody's got a Gmail account, maybe a Yahoo account. I'll go to Gmail if I were you. Anyways, or a church account, whatever it is. So they're locked in a lot more to their email accounts, and they're less apt to change them. So it's much easier to manage. And then Google Ads. If you have a Google Ads platform, which you should have, you should be spending at least 1 to 2 hours, probably at least 1 hour a week on posting content onto Google Ads. But you have to have that platform in place to do that. So the point is, between 11 to 18 hours that I just threw out there, that's a lot of time. We got busy schedules, but it's important, in my opinion, to do social media and be a part of that process as well. What type of content? We kind of covered this briefly. Testimonies, pastoral quotes. What did you call the hope? Moments of hope? Moments of hope. I just love the phrase because we all need it, especially right now. Did it evolve out of during the COVID time? Okay, so the Moments of Hope thing they do on the 5-minute videos, are they all members mostly? Okay, and everybody should be involved in the process. And one thing you have to do is, I believe, and I didn't mention this and I apologize, but is that you need the people to buy into what you're doing. All right? You need to get the staff, I don't care how old they are or how young they are, they need to buy into it. I had a pastor say to me, I'm so close to retiring, I don't really care anymore. And he actually said that out loud. I said, you should retire today. I really, really said that because I really feel like I think, and I have a good relationship with him, so no big deal. He didn't take it too offensive. The point was he should care till he's done. And he should care after that, because it's imperative that you care. I did a huge training at a big church in Hearst for Google training. We taught them how to use Google platform. Every single staff member was involved, just about, except for a couple of people. They had some volunteers covering the phones, and it was huge. I did 3 or 4 hours. I think it ended up being almost 4 hours of training. A lot of interaction, a lot of live showing of stuff, and people. At the end, it was all over with. It went really well. People had their eyes were, the light bulbs were coming on. It was great. And then this old lady came up to me, which I didn't know who it was at the time, because I didn't know her. I was relatively new to the organization, and she was like, "Tim, I appreciate everything you just taught me, but I'm retiring in 2 weeks, and I'm not going to do anything you said." I was like, "That makes sense. I'm okay with that." But she's not going to be there, so it wasn't relevant to her. But she showed up and stayed for 4 hours. I thought that was shocking. So that really surprised me. Asking questions. People, we make a lot of assumptions in churches. We assume that everybody knows everything about us. Don't we? Just be honest. We all think that everybody knows everything about our church. The reality, a lot of people don't know anything about your church. Depending on the role they play, even the active people have misinformation. Talk about fake news in our own churches. We have our own version of that. Oftentimes it happens a lot. Behind the scenes, consider a tour. Maybe do a visual tour. Now, if you're in that kind of church that's really kind of a big dump, maybe not. Clean up your house, your buildings first, then go do a tour. But you could do a visual tour of our church. If you show up in our church, this is what you can expect. I had one church who kind of simulated the whole thing. It was really kind of goofy. And they're almost uncomfortable goofy, where they're like, "Welcome to our church," and they're hugging everybody. It's pre-COVID, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's not how it is," So don't fake it, just make it real. And you can go go live if you want to. You don't have to. Those things you can pre-record ahead of time and post the content on there. All right. So one of the important things I wrote here, important notes with regards to social media management from a church's perspective, I believe, and you've heard me say this multiple times today, is to control the narrative. Control what people are saying. You can't control their lives. You don't control them individually. I'm talking about what they're saying in relationship to the content that's from you as a church. That's important that they see who you are as an organization. Now, guess what? I've been doing this a long time. Most of the churches I work with, I have outlasted all of the staff members. I have some of them organizations that were here online earlier. I think they're still online, but they're on a different channel now with YouTube or something. They have worked with over 20 years. So there's a few staff members that outlasted me. But the point I'm trying to say is that we have a turnover rate in our churches. Most churches do. At some point I always say, you all will leave at some point. So the technology that you implement today has nothing to do with you. The technology that you believe in has nothing to do with you. It has to do with how you're going to use it as a tool to reach out and to minister to people, to change people's lives, to develop relationships that are strong and effective, and get them engaged. It used to be, we have live streaming because we're hoping that they'll be part of our church. Now we have live streaming because we want them to be part of our church where they're at. In Canada. You know what I'm saying? You see the difference? We all did live streaming. The approach was, if they watch the video, they're going to come in and want to be part of our church. Not happening anymore. We have this thing called the new normal, and I mean totally new normal for our churches. I promise you, I'm willing to bet this one, that I'm going to be right, that our versions of churches today are already changing anyways, but 10 years from now, it is going to be different. It is going to be different how we think of churches. Tarrant Baptist Association was online. Gary Kroll, I saw him earlier. Tarrant Baptist Association is an association for Tarrant County, right? But they allow churches from outside their county to be part of their association. That was a unique concept. Most associations don't do that. They allow that to happen because they recognize it's not just about their local community. They're very involved, as you know, if you know Tarrant Baptist. They're very involved in the local community, very much so. But they also allow other churches because they recognize this is a world we have an environment of a chance where we can minister and support each other because it's more about the cause of Christ than it is about our purpose in life as a church. So it's very important. All right, so let me ask a couple questions. What type of social media that you're already using that you feel like is working in your churches? Anybody? Hey, Ray, is this on? Ray, is this on?
We have an online Facebook minister, and so he reaches out to the community and offers prayer. And so he has his ministry group online of maybe 100 or more people, that probably will never come to our church physically, but he has this relationship with people that he's
And they're engaged in
Yes.
content or information related to your church.
through prayer. He prays beautiful prayers for them, and they talk about whatever's going on. So, yeah, that's it.
That's the one thing I also forgot to mention, that I know, like Ray's church hired a part-time guy, I think, when COVID hit, to be the what's his title? The iCampus pastor. Now we're going to talk about this in live stream next session, but it's not going away, people, at all. We are going to have iCampus pastors a lot more coming into our churches. Now, they may not be as formalized or informalized as their churches, however you want to look at it. But some people are going to hire like full-time people doing that, because guess what? It's a whole world out there we get a chance to expose ourselves to. It's awesome what we get to do. And social media gives us the platform. Anybody else have something that you feel like is working in regards to any form of social media that you're doing in your churches that you want to talk about? Yes, Ray?
We do sound bites from the sermons that we record on YouTube. Hello, my name is Ray. First of all, I'm the tech guy here for today. But we do sound bites from the sermons. Basically, that helps our traffic on YouTube and Facebook. So that is uploaded. So let's say the sermon was about hope. We'll do a short 10-second soundbite of that sermon, linking it to Facebook and YouTube, and we've had a lot of big responses on that as well.
Small is good. It doesn't have to be a whole production. I'm telling you, when we talk to live stream, people don't watch your whole sermons, whole services, excuse me. We'll talk about that. I can't wait to talk, because you're going to hear some interesting, uncomfortable things, but the reality of what it is. Anything else? Anybody else have any other thoughts on what's working for you? Okay, what kind of responses? Now, Ray just mentioned part of it. Anybody know of tangible responses you've had from people from your social media platforms that's working? Yes, Lance.
We've through the pandemic time, we immediately got online and wanted to improve our online content, and we just a month ago we had 31 people join the church just through the pandemic period because of the interaction that we had, and we're trying to build the online content to be more, we're trying to think of that as a second campus. What are we doing online to make that work?
Steal my thunder. Yeah, no. Yeah, we're going to talk about the multiple campuses that we're creating now through online mechanisms. Absolutely. So yeah, social media, obviously we can do this all day long. We're going to stop right now, but it is a very powerful opportunity for you as a church to take advantage of it. You don't have to understand it all. I don't understand it. I do it all day long, and I still don't understand it all. I get overwhelmed by it. But I also recognize the power that God has given us, the tools He's given us to use. And if your members are using it, and they are, you know they are, then why would you not be a part of that? So consider that. Any other questions for this before we finish ready for lunch? All right, I'm going to pass it on to Brother Bob. Thank you. Next session will be just live streaming in a cool way, so we'll see how that goes. All right.
All right. Once again, I want to thank our host church here, Richland Hills Baptist Church, for letting us have control of this facility. We just tried to find some place that was big enough that we could set people at a social distance. I think we mostly accomplished that, so that's good. And I do want to thank Ray, our sound guy, and Jen, working out there on the other side. And for all those people at home, I suppose you're there. We're going to take a quick break, and not a quick break, about an hour break. For some reason, Zoom has a strange thing, and I couldn't figure it out, and that is I couldn't get the next session to start early enough. So the next I could do automatically was 12:30. I don't know if that's something. I don't know what I'm doing, which is possible. But so the next session actually starts at 12:30, which means it gives about an hour for you guys to have a discussion or whatever on communication. You can communicate. So let me also thank Leonard Harris and Jenny Chin for being here today, for helping support us, and we do appreciate that. And Tim, thank you so far for what you've given to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do have some box lunches back there. I think we got roast beef and ham and turkey, and it's from Firehouse Subs. I don't know if you've been to Firehouse Subs, but they say it's good. That's good. So we'll give you your choice of socially distanced box lunches. There's also some drinks in the cooler down there, so we'll let you guys do that. Let me say a prayer for us before we eat, and then obviously we're going to have some more folks join us. We appreciate that. So we're fixing to pray for lunch. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you again for this church to allow us to come here and to just meet together in person. Lord, we thank you for keeping us safe, and we just ask that you would be with the many ministries that are represented here, that they would find favor in your eyes, and that they would be safe. And Lord, we pray for a quick end to this virus so that we can go back to normal, whatever that is. And Lord, at the same time, we don't want to be going back to what we used to do. Father, help us to understand ministry and how we can do it different and better. And again, we thank you for the food. We thank you for the fellowship. And Lord, we just thank you for Tim and for his life and for what he's done. And again, we thank you in all things. In Jesus' name, amen.